guys, today we're gonna start reading Dovey Coe. I sent you guys home with this book on the last day of school in case that we were gonna go beyond the 2 weeks of e-learning. So as you know, we are going to be going beyond those 2 weeks, at least to the end of April. So we are going to begin reading this book together today. So it's Dovey Coe. Frances O'Rourke Dowell is the author. You can see that it was winner of the Edgar Allan Poe Award. And the chapters are pretty short. Today we're just going to read through the first chapter and talk a little bit about it. You're also still expected to do a C reader, 80% or higher for today's lesson. So you should have about 30 minutes worth of work, including listening to this chapter. You can follow along with the book that I sent home with you. You each have your own copy, or you can just listen as I read chapter number 1. So it starts off chapter 1. My name is Dovey Coe, and I reckon it don't matter if you like me or not. I'm here to lay the record straight, to let you know them folks saying I done a terrible thing are liars. I aim to prove it too. I hated Parnell Caraway as much as the next person, but I didn't kill him. I know plenty of folks who thought about it once or twice after Parnell shot a BB gun at their cats or broke their daughters' hearts. They're the same ones who go around now making out like Parnell was an angel, a regular pillar of society. The truth is, there ain't no one in Indian Creek who don't believe Parnell Caraway was the meanest, vainest, greediest man who ever lived. 17 years old and rotten to the core. You'll probably notice now at this point the way that she talks. You can tell that she's got a little bit of twang kind of to her voice, and she doesn't necessarily speak proper English, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. So she's kind of talking to us, and she's telling us that she didn't kill a character named Parnell Caraway, who we don't know who that is yet, and that she lives in a town called Indian Creek, but we don't know where that is yet either. So we'll talk about the different parts of the setting as we get through a little bit more of the book like we typically do in class. Of course, his daddy being the richest man in town meant Parnell could do about whatever he pleased without anybody saying boo back to him. Most of the folks who live in town rent their houses from Homer Caraway and buy their dry goods from his store, and they know better than to cross him. You so much look at Homer Caraway wrong, and he can make your life right miserable. Every time I start complaining about having to walk a half a mile down the mountain to school every morning, I remember how lucky we are to own our land. It ain't much, 4 acres, a 5-room house, and a barn, but it keeps us Coes from being beholden to Homer Caraway, and I'd walk 10 miles to school to keep it that way. So her family lives up in the mountains, and they seem to be one of the only people in town who actually owns their house. There's a Caraway family that is very wealthy, and they own kind of the bank, which is the financing, and the store in town. So everybody else in town is kind of indebted to this family. So they kind of ruled the town. I know it pained Parnell that we weren't indebted to his daddy. Maybe if we had been, my sister Caroline would have married him the way he kept asking her to do. Carolyn Coe was the one thing Parnell wanted that he couldn't have. As conceited as Parnell was, it took him a long time to figure that out. On page 1 and now page 2, there's 2 words that popped up that were vocab words that I asked you guys to find definitions for. The first word was vain, and the second word is conceited. And from the definitions that you guys wrote, you can see they're very similar. They're synonyms, and that they mean that somebody who thinks very highly of themselves kind of thinks that they're the best, and, you know, that their poop don't stink, so to speak. But I'm getting ahead of myself, which I do from time to time. You probably want to know where I'm from and who my family is. The particulars that folks tend to be interested in, sorry. Like I said, my name is Dovey Coe. There have been Coes living in Indian Creek, North Carolina, since the beginning of time, and I expect there always will be. So now that we know Indian Creek is in North Carolina, We're mountain folk, and once you've been living in the mountains for a while, it's hard to live anywhere else. You can walk over to the graveyard behind the church in town and see coves going back as far as 1844. The most recent stone belongs to my granddaddy Caleb, who passed on 2 years ago when I was 10. It says, "Here lies Caleb Coe, loving husband to Rebecca Coe, father to Matthew, Luke, and John Coe. Born May 17, 1861, died December 2nd, 1926. May he walk with the Lord." John Coe is my daddy. He's what they call a jack of all trades, meaning he can't fix anything you got that's broke and some things that ain't. Folks bring him their busted radios, their haywire toasters, their broken down automobiles, and Daddy tightens a screw here, reconnects a wire there, and makes it as good as new. Them who have money to pay give him $1 or $2 depending on the size of the job, and them who don't have a dime in their pocket work out a barter. When Gaither Sparks' carburetor died, we got a new pig and a pound of sugar. It evens out, as Daddy is all the time saying. So he kind of trades his services as kind of the fix-it, the handyman in town, and gets paid sometimes with animals, livestock, milk, eggs. Going back to when they discussed about her grandfather's gravestone, it said that he was born in 1861 and died in 1926. So we can assume that this is not present day. 1926 is when her grandfather died. So it's probably somewhere in the late 20s, early 30s. Mama grew up over in Cane Creek Holler, not 2 miles from here. She still hums a song she learned when she was a little girl while she works around the house, and she has taught many of them songs to me. I try my best to remember them right way, and I always pretend like I'm paying attention when she's telling me all the things she says a young lady ought to know. Besides Caroline, I got me an older brother named Amos, age of 13, and he loves good adventures as much as I do. We spend a good portion of our days running around on Katie's Knob, hunting arrowheads or hunks of crystal quartz, tracking all manner of wild animals, and generally having a big time. We live in the house my daddy grew up in, and every morning I look out upon the same mountains my daddy looked out upon when he was a child. I like sitting on the porch watching the summer evenings fall across the valley, listening to Daddy pick old tunes on his guitar. I enjoy the cozy feel of sitting next to the wood stove when there's a frosty bite in the air. There's at least 1,000,000 other things that all add up to my good life here, more things than I can even say or even remember. They're so natural to me now. That's why it's hard to believe they might send me away from here. It's not that I blame Carolyn for this whole mess. I know deep down inside it isn't exactly her fault. But on top of things, it sure feels that way. So that's the end of chapter 1. Like I said, it's a short chapter. We're introduced to some of the characters. Dovey Coe obviously is going to be our main character. She has a 13-year-old brother, Amos, who's older, and she has an older sister, Caroline. So she is the youngest in the family, and she is 12 years old. We are going to pick up with chapter 2 tomorrow, and then after we're done with chapter 2, I have some discussion questions that I'm going to have you guys respond to. And you'll be able to respond to those either by typing it out on pages, or if you want to make a video of yourself and record your answers and send it to me, or if you want to write them out by hand and then just take a picture and send it to me. And I'll talk about that more next time when we read chapter 2. Hope you guys are doing well. I really miss being in class with you guys. It's nowhere near the same. So anyway, I will see you guys soon on the video. Bye.